You were born in a dark thicket where the wind rustled and the air smelled of damp bark. Small, curious, defenseless. Your mother was nearby, her breath, her footsteps, her warmth. The forest was your home, and you knew it by heart. Every path, every stream, every scent. You grew up among birds and whispers. Everything was simple, until one day, humans came. They moved in a line, dressed in white suits, carrying devices the forest had never known. They walked silently, but you caught their scent, cold, metallic. You froze, but it was too late. A flash, a crackle, a net. Everything spun around. You struggled, but their hands held tight. They took you away, and the forest disappeared behind the car door. They took you to a large laboratory that stood at the edge of the forest, a tall white building with bars on the windows and heavy iron doors. After a while, you woke beneath a bright white light. The walls gleamed, and the air smelled of metal and medicine. A laboratory. People in masks spoke strange words. Specimen, mutation, phase. You didn't understand, but you could feel it. You were no longer home. They laid you on cold tables, measured you, injected you. Sometimes they covered you with a glass capsule. It hummed and glowed. Sometimes they gave you water with a bitter taste. At first, there was only fear, then pain. And with each passing day, it grew worse. You knew this was hell. At night, you thought of your mother, your home. You couldn't believe that. In a single moment, it had all been taken away, wiping tears from your little face. You kept believing that one day you'd escape from here. Weeks passed. Your body began to change. Bones grew thicker, muscles stronger. You could no longer stand on 4 legs. Something inside you wanted to rise higher. People took notes, snapped photos, whispered to each other. But in their eyes, you saw not curiosity, fear. The skin on your forelegs split, and claws began to grow through. For the first time, you heard someone whisper,
"He's not a deer anymore."
and in that moment, you understood. There was no way back. Time moved on, and you kept changing. It became harder and harder to recognize who you once were. You had grown massive, powerful, unstoppable. Then one day, as the scientists went about their usual studies, you lay chained to a cold metal table, the straps holding every bit of your strength in check. But with one paw, you felt it. One of the straps wasn't fastened properly. That was your chance, your only chance to escape. The straps snapped. You broke free from the cold table and bolted down the corridor without looking back. The siren wailed. Red light flashed across the walls, scattering over the glossy tiles. People shouted. Someone reached for a weapon, but you didn't stop. Bullets whistled past, striking the walls, yet you kept running toward the air, the rain, the forest. When you burst through the door and breathed in the cold taste of freedom for the first time, the wind hit your face, carrying the scent of pine. You were home, only no longer the same as before. You fled deep into the woods. They tried to find you. They set traps, strung barbed wire, left out bait, but bullets didn't help. Thunder didn't help. In time, they grew tired and left. The entire forest was fenced off, and a sign was hung upon the gate. Danger, do not enter. Rumors began to spread among the locals about a great deer that walked on 2 legs, with claws like a beast. The forest grew quieter. At night, only your footsteps, the rustle of branches, and the breathing of other creatures. The hunters who dared to enter never came back. One after another, they vanished, and so the forest emptied of people. No one dared to come here anymore, not even by accident. All the creatures of the forest bowed before you. They could feel. You were stronger than any of them. You became the master of this place. You lived alone. Wolves kept their distance. Bears stepped aside. You became the king of the night. The forest obeyed you, but deep inside, there was still an emptiness, a memory of the day they took you. You didn't know why you lived, only that you did. You hated the light. It burned your eyes, reminding you of the lamps under which you had suffered. That's why you attacked anyone who came with lanterns or campfires. Light was the enemy. Darkness, your home. That's what you believed. But one day the sky was torn apart by a roar. An airplane. It flew low with a heavy, muffled sound. Then, an impact. The ground shook. You ran toward it. Through the smoke and sparks, you saw fire and twisted metal. The adults didn't move, dead. And beside them, 4 children, small, trembling, crying. They were calling for their parents. One boy held a toy. Another clutched a girl to his chest. The youngest just screamed in fear. You stopped. Inside you, something flared up. An old pain, sharp and familiar. You remembered yourself, small, helpless, strapped to that cold table back then. No one came. No one saved you. And you realized you didn't want the same fate for them. You stepped closer. The children saw you at first. They screamed. Then they froze. In their eyes, fear, but beneath it, something else, hope. You leaned down, carefully lifting one of them with your claws, as if afraid to hurt him. You couldn't just leave them here, so you decided to keep them, to make them yours. Each child you placed in a different cave. For each, you chose a shelter, safe, guarded. The first child you brought to a den watched by ordinary wolves. They guarded the entrance, but they knew the child was not to be touched. The second you left in the lair of an alpha pack, strong, fast, loyal. The third you carried deep into the forest, to a vast cavern where 2 giant bears lived, lazy by day, but savage by night. The fourth you hid deeper than all the others, in the heart of the forest, where 6 colossal bears dwelled in eternal darkness. Their roars rolled through the stones, warning off anyone who dared to approach. You came back often, brought them food, berries, roots, carrots found in overgrown gardens near abandoned houses. Sometimes you carried water and leaves. You watched them eat, shivering from the cold. You lay beside them, letting your warmth keep them alive. Sometimes they fell asleep without crying, and in those moments, you knew you'd done the right thing. They didn't understand what you were, a monster or a savior, but over time, they stopped being afraid. One day, the youngest girl came closer and simply placed her hand on your leg. You didn't move, you just exhaled. To you, these children became more than just another part of the forest. They became part of you. In their eyes, you saw the same relief you once longed for yourself, the release from the pain humans had caused. Weeks passed, then months. People came searching for the children, but found nothing. Some died, some ran. The forest did not forgive. And you protected the children and your forest. You didn't kill out of anger, only when someone came too close to them. The wolves and bears obeyed you without a word. The forest lived by your law. With time, other people entered the forest, not hunters, not soldiers, just criminals hiding from the law. They saw you. Fear hit them first. Then they gave you a name. They called you the god of the forest. They carved symbols into stones, brought food to your cave in daylight, and worshipped you. They needed something stronger than their fear, a reason to justify why they hid here. You didn't attack as long as they stayed away from the children, and they learned the rules. Don't light the fire too bright, don't step where your shadow falls, and you will survive. That's how the cult began. They thought you accepted their worship, but you didn't care. You only watched to make sure neither light nor humans reached what mattered most, the children. And then everything changed. A group of volunteers entered the forest, 5 people. They saw the sign, "Do not enter," but came anyway. They came to save the children. Their photos hung on the gate. You knew those faces. You saw them every night as you walked past the caves. You watched from afar. They set up camp and lit a fire. The light pierced the sky, and it hurt you, but you didn't attack. Day 1, silence. On the second day, one of them went to gather firewood, and you followed him. When he finally noticed you, he turned on his flashlight. The beam hit your eyes, and you recoiled. The same pain as in the laboratory he ran. You stayed. For the first time in a long while, you felt not rage, but curiosity. You came more often. Sometimes you simply stood aside and listened. They talked about the children, argued, made plans. You understood. They weren't hunters. They were rescuers. But the forest hates the light, and the cultists didn't want anyone to break the boundaries you had drawn. They attacked the camp, tried to extinguish the fire, and you stood at a distance, watching you helped neither side. Understanding that the humans came for the children, you went out to hunt every night. You couldn't allow them to take the children out of the forest, but somewhere deep inside, you knew letting them go would be the right thing. You just couldn't do it anymore. Day by day, the volunteers pushed deeper into the forest. They found old notes, traces, torn open cages. They saw your claw marks on the trees. And finally, they found the first cave. The wolves growled, protecting the children until the very end, but the rescuers handled them quickly. A child was carried outside. You stood in the shadows nearby, but you didn't interfere. One of the children was taken back to their camp, and with each passing day, the fire there burned brighter. A new tent appeared, and children's laughter echoed. Every night you came to the camp and watched from the darkness. You saw the first rescued child laughing alongside the volunteers, and doubt began to grow inside you. You didn't want to let them go, but did you really have a choice? Days passed, and the rescuers reached the second cave. The second cave was guarded by the alpha wolves. The fight was brutal. One of the volunteers was injured, but the child was saved. You watched from the darkness, feeling something trembling deep inside you. A few more days passed. The people moved even deeper into the forest. They found another, the third, cave. The bears defended the entrance desperately, their roar shaking the air. But the humans had enough weapons. Under a barrage of gunfire, the bears retreated. With each passing day, the fire in the camp burned brighter. They built a tall wall to protect themselves from the cultists. They planted gardens, gathered food, cooked meals. Over time, their camp turned into a true fortress. You came every night, but the rescuers knew this. And now, at least one person kept watch until dawn. After sunset, no one stepped outside. From afar, you heard laughter and children's voices, and you understood they would be better off with the humans. But after all the time they had spent with you, they had become a part of you. With pain in your heart, you decided it was time to let go. Let them be happy with the humans. And you would simply remember. That night, you went to the fourth cave. The child brightened when he saw you smiling. You fed him. He fell asleep quickly in your arms. You couldn't leave for a long time, watching him sleep. Then you quietly laid him on a sleeping mat, covered him with a blanket, and said goodbye inside. Everything tore apart, but you still walked away. You led the bears far from the cave, leaving it unguarded, knowing the rescuers would come in the morning and take the child. By morning, they arrived and found him. Carefully, they lifted the child and carried him back to camp. When they returned, the people began packing, preparing to leave. With the fourth child, the camp truly came alive. The children laughed, the humans rejoiced, and you stood deeper in the forest, watching everything you lived for had gone to the firelight. You had no purpose left. The forest no longer needed you. You didn't know what you were now. A monster, a god, or just a shadow. Night fell quickly, and the humans didn't finish packing before sunset. When the sun slipped behind the horizon, you came to the camp again. All night you stood nearby, listening to children's laughter, the quiet conversations by the fire, watching how happy they were. For the first time in a long while, you felt peace. Dawn arrived. The children and rescuers were already awake. The camp stirred under the first rays of the sun. You walked closer than ever before. The humans saw you, massive, with horns, claws, eyes reflecting the fire. No one fired, no one moved. You had come to say goodbye, to look at the children one last time when they saw you. They smiled, brightened, reached out to you. You stood in the shadows, watching them, alive, safe, happy. Once you made sure they were well, you lowered your head softly and stepped back. You approached an old hatch, heavy, rusted, sealed for centuries. Beneath it lay old tunnels, abandoned and dead. There was no light there. No one lived there. You looked at the children. They stood by the adults, pressing against them. You remembered standing alone in that laboratory, small, without a mother, surrounded by lamps. No one saved you then, but them you saved, and that was enough. You hooked your claws under the lid and tore it open. The air below was cold, damp, but calm. You stepped to the edge, then turned back. No one moved. No one spoke. You simply jumped. Silence. The fire crackled. The people stood there, unable to believe it was truly over. You didn't go underground out of fear. You went because you understood. Your place was where there was no light. The children now belonged to the day and you to the night. After your disappearance, the forest grew quieter. The wolves returned to the hunt, the bears to their trails. The cultists vanished. The humans placed a new sign. The forest is cleansed. But at night, someone still hears heavy footsteps underground. Some say it's just echoes, but those who heard it, they know. It's not a sound. It's breathing. You are no longer a monster or a god. You are simply the one who didn't let the little ones remain alone. You did what no one ever did for you. And when the 99th night comes, the forest whispers your name softly with respect.